Good morning, sir.
Well, good morning, Bill. It's a pleasure to join you again.
I'm glad you're taking the time. Because you guys are up all hours of the night now.
Well, interestingly enough, the transformer in my hotel blew up, so I've been up since about 6 o'clock this morning.
Well, boy, there we go. It's perfect. All right. So, first of all, we've been talking about this trying a child, a youth, as an adult, and changing the rules.
Yep.
What's raise the age is the catchphrase. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you've heard all kinds of opinions this morning, Bill, and no matter where you stand on the issue, what I strongly object to is what we do at the state level will be a policy decision, not a budget decision. You've heard all of us scream and yell about the process and how there's no transparency. You roll this piece of legislation into a $150 billion budget, I don't think it gets the scrutiny it deserves. I don't think it would get the debate it deserves. And I truly believe it's a political way. You kind of tuck it in there, and if it's a controversial vote, you put it in the budget with some other rather appealing items. And legislators who might have been adamantly opposed to this might get a little weak in the knees because they don't want to get criticized for voting against some of the good parts of the budget. So I think it's a political ploy. I would welcome a full-scale debate and discussion after the budget is passed. And what is really holding these budget up are these policy issues, not so much money. I guess there's some back and forth on how much school aid, but that's annual tradition, and we can work that out. But it's raise the age, it's Uber, it's the free college tuition, which, by the way, is a misnomer because taxpayers are going to pay for that. So it's not a free college tuition. I grind my teeth every time I hear that expression. It's just not so.
So do you think
it's those incidental issues that are blocking this thing up, and nobody wants to back down. As you said, the IDC is adamant about it. I suspect a vast majority of our Democratic colleagues in the Assembly have drawn the line there. And in a sense, we on the Republican side are kind of glad to see that some people are finally standing up to this governor and his dictatorial way of doing things in New York State.
Well, even those that seem to be for some of the policy items that are placed in here, those downstate Democrats are criticizing the governor, saying this should not be happening this way. This is policy, not budget.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly right. Exactly right. It should be. We could have this budget done without these extraneous issues, and then move on and discuss them and give them the scrutiny they warrant. Because as you've found out today, it's a very complex issue. I think one of the strongest, and you touched on it. I think one of the strongest issues in my mind. I'm hearing from a lot of our upstate counties that this is going to bring additional cost to them. It's going to be another, and the dirty word is unfunded mandate, but that's exactly what we're going to be dumping on these counties.
Do you agree with the Assemblyman Brindisi, who says schools are depending on these numbers? We have to get this budget done, so if that means we have to stay this week and hash it out, we can't wait till May 31st.
We've been in Albany 10 straight days. I would prefer to get the budget done sooner rather than later, and I have to agree with them. I mean, schools are in a desperate position. They have to make guesstimates on revenues and what they're going to get from the state. It puts them in a very untenable position, and they should not have to suffer because of our inability to come to any kind of consensus on a budget. So I say pull these policy issues out of it. Go back. Let's talk about the dollars and cents of the state budget and get it done, and then move on to those other topics.
I suggest five shots of espresso. That'll wake you right up. You'll be. Although you seem pretty wide awake. I mean, you seem all right. So.
Well, this is about my 6th cup of coffee this morning. There's not much else to do.
There we go.
Hey, the only other point I want to make, and it came out in the debate, we think this whole notion of a 6-week extender is a punitive action by the governor. I agree with that. That means we will not be paid, the legislators.
That was one of the rules. Question.
We don't have a budget. So it's kind of like, all right, you don't want to do my budget my way, then you go a couple of months without a paycheck coming in. We'll see how you like it then.
Okay, Assemblyman Marc Butler, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
All right, Bill. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
That was one of the questions we asked earlier this morning. By the way, I miss birthdays, too. John Guba from his wife and family, happy birthday, gets a cake from the Florentine Pastry Shop. One of the questions we asked earlier this morning was, do these guys get paid? Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi on the line right now. Good morning.
Yes, the answer is no.
The answer, yes, the answer is no. Let's start. I agree with you. I mean, we talked to Dr. Rick Timms yesterday about this issue, and he said schools are really in a tough predicament. They got to put budgets up for a vote in May, and they're just going to be guesstimating.
Well, what they're probably going to do is they're going to go off of whatever the governor's education number was, which was low. And, you know, if you look at just, for example, Utica, if you go off of the governor's education number, you're looking at a $1.5 million deficit, and that means that there's going to be layoffs. You know, staff is going to get laid off, and this is a critical time for us to come together to get a budget done that increases education aid so we don't have to see these layoffs, not just in Utica, but everywhere, because there's going to be programming cuts in other school districts that are struggling, and we need to get this done.
I want to talk about raise the age here, and you especially as an attorney can define some of this. Where are you on this topic? And, I mean, on the surface, well, it's tough to think about a 13-year-old, no matter what his crime is, or her crime, to be fair. It's tough to think about a 13-year-old being charged as an adult. However, the cry from the right is another unfunded mandate. Yeah, this is an issue, but the governor's not explaining how we're going to pay for it. Where are you?
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. Essentially, what it is, New York and North Carolina are the only two states left in the country that still prosecute minors, no matter what offense they commit as adults. What the Raise the Age proposal says is that for misdemeanors, for nonviolent offenses, youths will be prosecuted in the family court where there's more services available for them to try and rehabilitate them, get them back into school or wherever it may be. But for those serious offenses, you know, your murder, your rape, your use of a weapon in a crime, those will still go to criminal court, and there'll be a youth part assigned. But that's a big struggle too. Is that it will be some increased costs, and that's something that I've raised within my own conference. Is that if this is going to go forward, we have to be mindful that funding has to be provided to help the counties implement these programs, because we can't allow another unfunded mandate on our counties.
So, do you vote for this? I mean, is this something you agree with? Does this need to be done?
The budget as a whole, or raise the age?
In particular, raise the age.
I think it is something that has to be done. You know, if you look at the studies, you show that as a minor, your brain just is not fully developed at that point. You don't understand the full consequences of your actions. We've all made stupid mistakes as a child. Some of us just happen to get caught and be prosecuted for it, whether it's committing a petty larceny or a minor drug offense. Once that record goes on your background, it stays with you for the rest of your life, which impairs your ability to get a job and become a productive citizen.
That's another. This is a whole different element of this. I mean, we've been talking on the violent crime side, where talking about kids going off to prison, but there is that whole other side of this staying on your record, whereas a juvenile it wouldn't, and being tried as an adult it stays on your record, and if you can turn your life around, you're still screwed because you got a violent felony or some sort of a felony on or even a misdemeanor on your record, right?
Right. And it even shows you can even look at putting minors, 16, 17-year-olds in adult correctional facilities is not productive. The chances of them being abused in the facility is increased. Their chances of rehabilitation go down, and the rates of recidivism go up. So it doesn't make sense to house them with adults.
Hasn't that been corrected, though? Didn't the governor sign in 2015 an executive order preventing that from happening in New York?
Well, he signed the Close to Home initiative, which hopefully took care of some of that, but there's still instances of where they will be sent to county jail or wherever to be housed in the meantime, because there's just not enough. For example, I have a colleague who was in Rockland County yesterday was raising the issue of, well, there's no facilities near Rockland County, so if you want, if there's a youth facility, they have to send them to Rochester to send them, and that's 5 hours away from your family. So, it's not the most ideal situation. But we do have to be mindful that the violent crimes, and that's one thing I've been pushing, is that those violent crimes, they stay in criminal court. We don't want, someone who's 15, 16, 17 who commits a rape or a murder or an arson being tried in the family court, they should be going to the criminal court and tried like adults.
I do have to ask you, and I know this might be getting into the weeds in this a little more than we need to. Basically, we should be talking about the budget. But I hear from people who work in these facilities, these youth facilities, juvenile facilities, they struggle. They're restricted on how they can handle. In some cases, these kids are violent. Some cases, they're taunting them. And they're really placed in a position where their hands are tied. So now, also, the counties are saying, boy, we're not going to be able to handle this. Our family court system's not going to be able to handle this. Isn't there, I mean, if this legislation were to move forward, which it seems like it shouldn't there be a plan in place to help all aspects of everybody involved, from the counties to the juvenile centers to the family court?
Absolutely. There should be funding attached to it, which is something we've been pushing for. At least I have, trying to push for that to make sure that if you put this program in place, it doesn't fail because the counties don't have the resources to implement it. So if we go forward with it, make sure that it's done correctly and make sure there's resources attached so they can actually do the job and get these kids rehabilitated.
Okay, in your eyes, and I realize the Senate, the IDC is your colleagues who've decided to caucus with the Republicans seem to be holding things up here in the Senate. What's got to be done? Does this thing get passed? Could it get done this week?
I think cooler heads need to prevail, and people have to come together to try and compromise. The alternative is just a disaster, and I talked about it yesterday a little bit with the OD that, the school issue is the biggest concern of mine. You have education funding flat. It's going to translate to layoffs in our school districts, which is no one wants to see that. So whether it's raise the age or Uber or college affordability or education funding or charter schools, whatever issues remain on the table, we have to sit down and compromise. When you have a budget, nobody gets everything they want. You try and do the best you can. At some point, you have to put the pencils down and compromise on the issues. And that's where we're having a difficulty trying to do that right now on a host of issues.
Yeah. Is the governor playing out of bounds? Is he playing unfair by putting all this policy in the budget?
It's not helpful. No one can argue with that. These are very big policy changes, and you think of a budget. It's dollars and cents. It's your revenues. It's your expenses. Those are the things that should be in a budget. The idea of putting policy in there is because he knows that some things are more controversial than others, and the only way to get them through is through the budget, which is not a great practice. If a policy is a good policy, it should stand on its own and pass on its own. And the one thing I hate that happens in New York State all the time is we just don't do enough hearings on big policy issues like raise the age or whatever it is. We should be sitting down, taking testimony from the DAs and advocates in the criminal justice system and whoever to talk about this issue to really move forward with what's the best policy for New York State. But, we have this habit of, the governor has this habit of putting everything into the budget, and then this is what happens. You have infighting and a late budget.
Again, I guess I'll ask again. Do you see? I mean, is there? Are these legislators going to look and say, "Boy, this is going to cause more damage than good. I'm going to concede here, here, and here"? Or, I mean, do you see any concession coming?
Well, I hope so, and I think we need to do it sooner or later. And I hope by the end of this week we can hopefully hammer something out. If not, the longer this thing drags on, the worse it's going to get. And maybe it's going to take some of these legislators not getting a paycheck to come to their senses and get back to Albany and sit down and get a budget done. We'll see. But we have to get a budget done, and we have to do it in the short term, not drag this thing out to May, which is the time frame for this extender.
Yeah. May 31st, which is about 2.5 weeks after schools vote on their budget. That's a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Anthony Brindisi, Assemblyman, thanks so much. I know you guys have been up late and all of that and taking the time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you, Bill.
All right, quick break. We'll come back at WIBX.